of circumcision is unusual in many ways. It is not necessarily the sole heritage of the Hebrews. Indeed, Abraham circumcised himself, but it could have been a custom, and it was likely to have been a previous custom of ancient civilizations. What it does seem, however, is that it is one of the first surgical interventions for the purpose of hygiene and cleanliness. Today, the medical literature shows without a doubt that circumcision is better for hygiene. It reduces the risk of venereal diseases and HIV, and it also reduces the risk of infection in women because the men's foreskin is generally more dirty. So, without a doubt, the hygiene dimensions of it are very pro the act of circumcision. So there is good reason to suspect that there was important medical and also reproductive benefits to circumcision. So when the use of circumcision, therefore, is a surgical intervention for an unnatural surgical intervention for human benefit. And because it is medically related, it is very much in the forefront of the human thinking and symbolism. So it has been used to show and to demonstrate the employment of instruments and surgery and intervention in human life. It is, in fact, a symbol and, in fact, commands and demands the employment of instruments. The very etymology of the word angel in its Hebrew form contains, it seems, two root words, mal and ach. The complete word for angel is malach, or malache, angels of. Malache hashalom, angels of peace. Malach. Two words. The first one, mal. Its base is also the base of the word milah, which is also circumcision, but it is also the word for word. Word is milah. It too seems to be the basis of a surgical intervention. The word for word is the basis of an inorganic use and deployment of instrumentation, of language, of speech, of names, in order to create structure to the human disposition. So it also was a great extraneous intervention in humanity for its betterment. And in the word for milah and word and also artificial intervention, and we also see that in the Hebrew word for electricity or for a great power, which is described in the Bible, but it was not really known what it was, and in modern day Hebrew it was re-attributed to electricity. That word is called chashmal. Also, the word mal or milah appears in it, which is also an artificial or extraneous or an energy which is unclear its source. These references to the angels, to the malach, and the subset of Malach, to the Chashmal, seem to suggest extraordinary forces, but technical forces, that seem to be coming into contact with the patriarchs. They were, by the simple people who might have looked on, might have been considered to be magical, godly, alien, cultic forces. But in fact, what it seemed that they may very much have been is a union of master craftsmen who were able to learn and to store and to transmit and to create a alliance of technical, knowledgeable people throughout the Near East and the empires from Assyria to Egypt. And the major trade routes and the major migration routes and travel routes of these people were none other than the Sinai Desert and the King's Road. And without a doubt, they would also have to pass the major sources of materials which were being quarried from the ground, which were also in the Sinai Desert and in the Negev and in the Dead Sea. So invariably, these personality types would be passing through these areas. And it appears that Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, who were also passing through these regions, seem to have met them and created a strategic relationship with them. In fact, it is one of the unsung relationships of the Bible, the relationship between the patriarchs and the malachim and the angels. And in fact, that we see that the entire traditions of the angels were adopted, and it seems that they were adopted by no less than the tribe of Levi. And how do we know this? Well, even the word Levi in the Hebrew, it means, and he shall accompany, the accompaniers of Israel. So it seems that there was a class of people that assimilated into Israel, or were friendly with Israel, and certainly who had met and allied themselves with the patriarchs of Israel, that they were master craftsmen, people of knowledge going through the region. And it seems reasonable that influential people like the patriarchs would have wanted to be in contact with such people. And in fact, it shows clearly in the Bible that Abraham chases after the three angels. For this, he is considered to be the most hospitable of people, because he chases after people to give them hospitality. But in effect, it would seem that he very much desired the company of these regal, informed individuals passing him by. And we see that Jacob also seems to meet these angels, and it seems that he also struggled with one of these angels, and his life was at stake when he struggled with them. In fact, the very name of Israel was given to Jacob because he struggled with El from Israel. He struggled with El, with God. This was a Canaanite name for God. He struggled with El, and he succeeded. And this was the source of Israel. And here we see not since the story of Abraham did another story emerge in the case of Moses' son. And we don't know if it was Moses' first son, Gershom, or his second son, Eliezer. But we know that one of the sons was circumcised. So here we already know with circumcision there seems to be an apparent presence of an angel-like figure. And in the verse just before, we see that not an El, the term referred to previously for a god, but the term Adonai, the tetragrammaton, Yud He Vav He, appears to Moses and tries to kill him. And straight afterwards, Zipporah takes a knife, which could have been used for any purposes, even to distance the attacker on Moses, but instead takes a knife and circumcises, commits to the sign of the covenant with the angels, the class of master craftsmen. And it seems that Moses, and this is shown through and through the text, that Moses is assisted by angels throughout the entire Exodus, that the angels help him destroy, to sabotage the wills of the Pharaoh, and to cause them to trip up and eventually to be destroyed. And also we see that the Levites became in charge of the building of the tabernacle, which required all the knowledge, all the technical knowledge of building instruments. And this technical knowledge was called none other than malacha, which means angelic work, or rather artificial work, or work of instrumentation. But its very root is from the same word, angel. So it seems that the Levites were very much the continuator and the Israelite embodiment of the angels and the work of the angels. And we also see that the later prophets, who most of them come from the tribe of Levi, were very much defensive of the covenant of the circumcision. And they championed the circumcision. And we see that also in the story of Elijah the prophet, who also was called the angel of circumcision. So here we see the rallying of circumstances which demonstrates that the Levites and the angels and Moses and the planning of the Exodus all were predicated in a larger worldview which was now taking on a new name, and that is the Tetragrammaton, Yud He Vav He. And in this verse that we refer to, it is not El, but it is Yehu. It is the Tetragrammaton that comes to Moses, and he reflects the promise of knowledge and capacity which would be the resource of Moses in his work and his engagement with the Pharaoh. The resources that we're talking about are made available because of the capacity of words, of language and of grammar, as discussed before. That was not possible within the context of a ideogrammic or a hieroglyphic or a basic early pictographic language. It could only be, and it has been demonstrated in the last several thousand years, that this form of linguistic structure was more suitable for complexity. And we see throughout the Bible that God and angels appear to figures in the Bible as historical processes, not necessarily as individuals, but as a set of circumstances which are sometimes out of their control, and afterward it is considered that God worked through these circumstances in order to tell a message to somebody about something else. And this is what happens too in the desert, where something mysterious occurs to Moses, which causes his wife to circumcise his son, and these circumstances would be a message for Moses to tell Pharaoh. And it also occurs in the story of Samson, where angel appears to Samson's parents and describes to him historical circumstances that will require Samson being given over as a Nazarite and who will fight the wars of Israel. And we see this in other circumstances, that psychology is and long, complex processes, not individual processes or not even individuals, but complex processes are the mediums and the instruments through which God uses in order to show his will and his ways. Not for naught are the angels referred to as armies, and God is referred to as the Lord of hosts. Who are the hosts? The hosts are the angels and the cherubim and the divine creatures, all of them very well organized, and in fact organized with communication like an army, and with on the routes and with methods of communication. Indeed, the first methods of communication are brought up very quickly in the stories of the Bible. None other than the raven and the dove, two types of homing birds, are used and are cultivated by Noah. And the knowledge of cultivation of animals for communication is very much embedded in the Israelite identity. In fact, doves were sacrificed in the temple, and they were known. The cycle of growing doves and reproducing doves and the different types of doves were known, and it is in fact the very symbol of the universality of the Bible and of peace, which is interesting because it appears in the figure with a olive branch in its mouth, but in fact its main function is delivery and communication of mail and of messages, and was deployed for the armies of Egypt, the armies of Moses, and the armies of the Lord of hosts. And in this dramatic meeting between Moses and God, who tries to kill him in the desert just before he was about to go to Egypt, and just before he was about to meet his brother or fellow conspirator Aaron, who would become the priest of the Israelite nation, Moses comes in contact with what seems to be an angel. And it seems that an alliance is made. And it seems that in that alliance, Moses is going to go forward, his son circumcised, with his demand that Pharaoh should send the people of Israel out to the desert for 3 days. What are they going to do in those 3 days and then return? They are going to have a national circumcision. But Pharaoh finally does not agree to do so. And it would take 40 years until that national circumcision occurred under the guidance of Joshua on the other side of the Jordan, just as the Israelite nation is about to enter the land of Israel.